Sitting here with Josh White, our buddy Chris, who you kind of grew up with Josh. You were probably a little Grom. Or
some know him as Yankee.
Yankee Doodle. You've been around the Northwest scene. But
absolutely.
Yeah, I'm super psyched to sit down with you. Being an Oregon guy, and you're an Oregon guy.
Absolutely.
And there's a little bit of timminess. I'm kind of excited about it. But
I'm excited too. Our paths haven't crossed very often. I kind of lay low, as most people know.
Well, and you were like the generation before me.
Before you. Yeah.
And I grew up out in the sticks, so I never even really got to... I mean, you didn't even really go to NAFA contests, did you? Like the North American Freestyle.
No.
You kind of already left and everything.
Yeah, I left Ashland in... I was in Ashland from kindergarten through high school. So I graduated in 85. 86, I moved down to Huntington Beach.
Yeah. See, that's what I kind of want to talk to you about, because it's like, I think everybody with like magazines and, knowing you from like, being a GT pro, they know a lot of people think you're from Camarillo.
No, live there.
But everybody doesn't know that. I wanted to kind of get a whole, and I know a few people that knew you from, used to ride with you in Oregon, and I kind of wanted to know a little more about, your Oregon history, because honestly, being a big time vert pro as you were, coming from Oregon at that time, was kind of crazy,
Yeah. I thought I was over my head quite a few times, because I'm riding with these pros that I read about in magazines, Eddie and Martin and these guys, and I'm like out of my element, because I just learned how to ride like in the sticks of Oregon, makeshift ramps.
You grew up in Ashland, right?
Grew up in Ashland, yeah.
Yeah, in Ashland
through high school. I mean,
Oregon in the 80s was really small. I mean, people think Portland now, or they might think Eugene, or even how Medford's gotten bigger, but the whole state was the sticks.
Yeah,
true. Even Portland was pretty small.
Yeah.
And, so how did you get into riding? Because you turning pro at 85, for you to really get into riding, it's going back to it was still very new.
It was a learning process, believe me.
Yeah.
I was, it was accelerated actually. As soon as I moved down to California, I started riding real ramps and riding with real riders, because I didn't have anybody to learn from other than magazines.
Jerry's not going to like this.
Yeah. Jerry had a different style. He liked wheelies, and he was
tree rides.
He skated a lot. And
he had a lot of street style.
Yes, a lot of street
style. And we're talking about Jerry
rides,
Dunlava, which is like a super OG Oregon guy.
Super OG, yeah.
King Medford.
See, Jerry was one of the first guys. The way I got into bike riding was I had a mongoose, like everybody did, and my best friend in high school, his dad ran the track in Medford, the racetrack.
Yeah, that track's that's one of the oldest, I think, Oregon tracks.
It's still there to this day.
Bear Creek.
Yeah. Bear Creek. Okay, and that's where I learned how to race and to jump and stuff.
So you started off racing.
Yep. Okay. Absolutely, because freestyle didn't exist back then. It was like Bob Harrow doing.
What year did you start racing? Was it 70s or?
No. It was, let's see. It was when I was in probably 7th grade. So that would have been like 80?
Okay.
81?
Yeah.
Something like that. So, and I only raced for maybe 1 or 2 years.
Yeah.
And there were so many times where I'd be going around a berm and somebody would T-bone me and take me out. Because it was crazy.
Racing in the 80s was different than racing nowadays.
Yeah, it was just a mad dash, okay? Yeah. I got crashed so many times, and I got so mad. I almost got in fights and stuff, and, people were like, I remember one time I grabbed the guy's bike and ran him and threw it, because I was so mad.
Yeah.
And it was just like, this is ridiculous. If I'm going to crash, I want it to be my fault.
Yeah.
So I'm going to just start doing freestyle. And at that time, it was Arlen Buff or all over the magazines, and freestyle didn't even exist.
So the BMX Action Trick Team.
BMX Action Trick Team. That was my inspiration.
So you were getting BMX Action.
Absolutely. That was my Bible.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That was my Bible. So I'd read what tricks is Arlen Buff going to do this week, and can I do it? Can I copy it? Can I do better? So I was way more excited about that than racing. Oh my God.
You were seeing more of the Arlen Buff, like the Trick Team stuff, than more of the cement park dudes at that time.
Yeah, exactly. I didn't really. The cement thing was cool. The skate park was cool. I didn't have any of that.
But I couldn't relate to it. It felt like that could have been on the moon.
You're right.
Like
I couldn't relate to it.
I could see a ramp, and me and my buddies would try to build a ramp,
right,
and put it in a cow pasture,
right.
We had quarter pipes out in cow pastures that we'd be like, I think this is what you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
So kind of probably the same thing.
Absolutely. And this was at the time before King of the Skate Park got big. So
King of the Skate Parks is 82, 82 or 83, I think.
Yeah. And it was just starting, and so my first inspiration obviously was the BMX Action Trick Team. And then, I started watching the guys in the skate parks going, oh my God, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Because they started going way higher, doing crazy tricks. Arlen Buff, they were great and they were groundbreaking. They were, but they were doing pretty simple tricks.
Buff's kind of he's one of the first dudes with a full vert ramp at his house.
Oh, yeah. I had a PK Ripper. Are you kidding me? He was my I had a candy apple red PK Ripper. It was my
That's a nice
favorite bike I loved it. And, and of course, Buff was the inspiration for that.
Yeah.
Of course.
And Buff was a superstar at that time.
And we saw him drop off the Bicycle Source roof, and so me and my friend, we started dropping off roofs. If Buff did it, it must be cool.
Yeah.
And so, but then, when as soon as I saw Mike and Eddie and Brian, okay, now this is where.
So did you end up building a ramp here? Or?
I built a little 6-foot Bob Harrow designed ramp.
Yeah.
Super undervert and small, and I put it in my driveway. Dirt.
Is that the one that you post photo you doing a look back on? I think on
No, that was Dave Griswold's ramp.
Okay.
That was in Central Point.
Okay.
So before that, I had
that one looked bigger than 6 feet.
No, that was his ramp. Yeah, it was
okay.
My first ramp. Actually, my brother posted a picture of me riding that. A black and white picture of me doing like a one-footed X-up. I'm not sure if it made it on my post or if it was just for me. But anyway, that was my first ramp, and I that's what I rode. So it was on a downhill driveway that was dirt.
Yeah.
So it was already not a vert ramp that was on a downhill. So
it was even more.
So it was almost just like a jump.
Yeah,
I can't even believe I could come back into it. And so it was crazy. So when my first contest was Venice Beach, and those ramps were 8 feet, and they still weren't vert. It would go right
to vert,
maybe an inch, not even that. And to me, that was like. I was like, oh my God.
Oh yeah.
This is massive. I can't even. So I would just go straight to the bottom.
Well, and then you guys had that half pipe. I've seen pictures of you and
that was later on.
And Timmy, Jerry's little brother.
That was Jerry's half pipe.
So, and how big was that one?
That was probably what was
because that ramp for the time being in Oregon. And that time, it seemed like a big ramp for the time.
Yeah, it wasn't that big.
Because it looked like 16 or 12 wide, right?
Yeah, it probably was. And it was probably about, I don't know if it was even 8 feet tall.
Really?
Honestly.
Yeah.
I really don't. I think it was like 6 or 7 feet tall at the most. But it might have been 8. It was a while ago. I didn't ride that actually that much. The half pipe I rode more was the one we had down on Oak Street, yeah.
Because I always heard about, was that the one under the bridge?
No, that was a jump. That was just a dirt.
Because everybody always talked about, Josh had this ramp under a bridge in Ashland.
It was a dirt jump. It was just a dirt jump to flat.
And he touched the bottom of the bridge?
Yeah, I don't,
we got pretty close.
You know how people, things will build and build?
Yeah.
And everybody be like, Josh, he had a really crappy quarter pipe under a bridge in Ashland, and that's what he learned to ride on. And I was like, must be true.
It's partly true. It's partly true, but not 100%. That was a jump. And then what had happened, and a lot of people don't know this, when I was, it was the 10th grade. Doing this jump and landing on flat.
Yeah.
Because it
was
was
a pop-out jump.
It was a pop-out jump.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we were airing 10 feet on this thing, and I'm like 14, 13 years old. Well, that takes a pounding on your back. And so I compressed my L3. Completely compressed
That
it.
young?
Yes.
Wow.
I missed my first 3 months of high school because I couldn't walk.
Wow.
Yeah, I had to go to a chiropractor 3 times a week for a year. And that didn't even fix it. And so what did fix it was just strengthening it, flexibility with stretching. I got into martial arts. Mm-hmm. I stopped riding because I couldn't ride anymore. So I started doing kickboxing.
Like in freshman year?
Yeah, freshman year, exactly. And didn't even own a bike.
Really?
Yep, didn't even own a bike, just kickboxed and stretched and worked out. Started getting into weightlifting, strengthening my back, and my back just kind of fixed itself.
Because you were still young enough to where your body was going to heal quicker.
The doctor said you should never ride a bike again, for one thing, and we might have to take that disc out. So it'd be bone to bone. Okay, and I said, no, you're not doing that.
Yeah,
okay?
and
you're not.
and looking back on that, that's a good idea because how many people do we know I know so many people that have had back surgeries.
Right.
And it doesn't fix anything. The only thing that fixes it is them stretching and working on their core and everything.
That's exactly what I did. And I didn't necessarily do it to fix my back. I just did it because I needed a physical outlet. I didn't have bike riding anymore, so I needed something to do. My dad was the manager of Brooklyn, which was a nightclub style, that pizza place, Creekside Pizza now. Yeah. And so the bouncer was a world-class kickboxer.
Oh, wow.
And he is a lifelong friend of mine. He just recently passed away, but he's the one that taught me kickboxing. So we would have impromptu kickboxing classes at the college wrestling room and wherever we could find. He didn't have an official school.
And that was still kind of even new to the States back then, you know?
Yeah, kind of, yeah. I mean, they had like PK kickboxing on ESPN sometimes, with the foam foot guards. And
I do remember seeing that, yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty early on. And I wasn't really into bowing and belts and stuff, so kickboxing was perfect for me because we didn't have any of that. It was just...
You're a little redneck where you're like,
I wasn't into that. I was pretty undisciplined, so we would just get in and beat each other up, and it was great. But it was awesome, and it was good. They were good classes, but so once my back got stronger, I was like, I might try this bike thing again, So
and did you still have friends down here that were riding some?
Yeah, Gavin Beatty.
See, I was going to ask you about Gavin.
He got me back into it.
A few of my friends are like, a few of the like Brett Hadley and a few of the dudes from Portland. They're like, gotta ask Josh about Brett, about Gavin, because
I don't have any updates on him.
Yeah, and for you not listening, I mean, Gavin is Oregon. I mean, he could have been one of the best ever.
He was a good flatlander. He was really good. He moved around a lot. He had a little bit unstable life. His mom was just kind of crazy, but so they moved around a lot. He was a really good rider, and he was one of my real best friends back then.
Yeah, he probably one of the first dudes to maybe even get coverage in Oregon.
Yeah, yeah, he might have been. So I don't have any updates on him. I haven't seen him in years and years and years. So I hope. Yeah,
a bunch of people wanted me to ask you that. They're like, has Josh talked to Gavin?
Yeah, yeah, he was a character, man. He was great. He was more of a flatlander. He didn't really do a lot of airs and stuff, but he was a street rider too. He used to do big drop-offs and really high bunny hops and just kind of street riding.
I mean, back then you didn't really, people rode street, but now when you look back, you're like, that dude was like when I was saying about Jerry.
Yeah.
When I met Jerry, I'm like, all he did, I swear, was just ride street. Like when he lived in Bend, it's like,
and that was before street really was a thing.
Yeah, I mean, it was maybe starting to come around, but hitting wall. That when I met him, I was like, what is this dude just ripping the city? Yeah.
Because he was a skater. To me, it was always skating influenced Jerry's BMX, in my opinion. Because he liked to street skate, and then he would, ride on the street on bike. So it was cool. I always liked to watch him ride, but I just kind of specialized in ramps. I just sort of stuck with that. It's like,
well, a lot of people were like, so you started riding again, and then.
I started riding again, and this all happened in a short period of time. It sounds like it's all happened over the course of a year.
Yeah, but if you think about high school's so short.
6 months is like forever. It's like, I mean, I didn't ride, and then we got into kickboxing, and then I started riding again. That all could have probably happened in the course of a year or maybe 2 at the most. Yeah. It's hard to remember the exact dates, but
you had a lot going on there.
Yeah, there was a lot going on. Yeah, I was, smoking a lot of pot, and my parents grew it, so
you're in Southern Oregon.
Yeah. So it was, I had fun in high school. And then after I got out of high school and I got sponsored by GT.
Well, so how'd that happen? I mean...
Okay, my mom drove me down to the Venice Beach contest.
The one in 85?
Yes.
So that was like
that was my first contest.
Big AFA contest.
Big AFA contest. First contest. First time I ever seen an 8-foot ramp. I was scared crapless.
What did you enter?
It was expert class, whatever.
17 expert?
17 expert, yeah. Exactly. Did best I could. Didn't ride that well. I was hitting flat bottom on every air.
Nori wanted me to ask you. He was telling me when he was at the jam, a few weeks ago we had down here in Talent.
Oh, Nori was?
He showed up right after you left.
Oh, and then Jerry showed up too, didn't he?
Jerry did show up. Yeah. Well, we knew Jerry would be late. Yeah. So, but Nori showed up and he was like, ask Josh about the 85 contest. He goes, because I remember Josh showed up at that contest and he was killing it, but he was landing low. So everybody was like, oh, that dude from Oregon, he seems pretty good, but he lands low. And he said the next contest Josh showed up to, he was landing buttery smooth on the things. And they're like, oh, that's cool. He's landing smooth now, but his tricks aren't held for very long. And then he said the next contest you showed up, you were holding the tricks as long as you could, and you kind of just... We're shutting people up every contest.
Yeah, exactly. I didn't want to be known as a sketchy rider. That really pissed me off. Yeah. I was smooth normally. It's just that I was nervous and the ramps were bigger than I was used to, and I just, I addressed the problem.
But was Nori right on all that?
Yes, of course. Absolutely, he was right.
And Nori said, he made it sound like he was happy every time he saw you come and just shut somebody up on it. So.
Yeah, so that's what happened. So anyway, when at the Venice contest, GT must have saw something in me because they said, okay, we'll give you free bikes.
Who was the GTTM at that time?
Sean Buckley.
Okay.
So they sent me some bikes, and I don't even know if it was any money. Probably not. It was a couple $100 or something like that. It was just a co-sponsorship, exactly. And so I went back up to Oregon, and that's okay. Now I started getting free bikes from GT. Okay, now I'm really started practicing.
Was Monty Hill on GT at that time?
No, not quite yet.
Okay.
Not that time.
I always wondered like who kind of was the first GT guy, you know?
Yeah, Gavin introduced me to Monty.
Okay.
He took me over to his house, and he had a really cool half pipe there.
The one behind his dad's shop.
Behind his dad's tool
Which
shop.
was a pretty big ramp for the time.
Pretty big ramp. It was a nice ramp. It was solid, really well built. I had never ridden a ramp that good in my life.
Yeah, I mean, that was
awesome.
That ramp's iconic in Portland.
Oh, it was great. And he wasn't even sponsored when I first met him, obviously. You know?
Yeah.
I don't know. And I didn't really have anything to do with getting him sponsored either. I didn't like put a good word in for him. He did it all on his own.
Yeah.
You know, it was all him. So good for him, you know.
Yeah.
And anyway. So, yeah, I got free bikes, started practicing seriously. I started treating it more like a job. Like, I would get up and I would say, okay, I'm going to practice for 6 hours a day or whatever.
Yeah.
You know, I'd put my gear on. I got serious, you know, because I was like, okay, well, good things are coming. I'll probably go on tour. And sure enough, I did. I went on tour with Brian Skura and Martin Eparijo.
Is that still in 85?
Yeah, I think it was 85, yeah. 85. And we went to Florida and did some bike shops and stuff because they had a big distributor out there. So that was really cool. And so I started taking it a lot more seriously, you know, and stopped smoking and I started eating better and I started treating myself more like an athlete, you know, and I remember that. I just kind of like, okay, it's time to get serious.
See pictures of you back then, and you look like...
Yeah, I started, you know...
You look like you were in super good shape.
I was in good shape. I took it seriously. I tried to train like I was an athlete, you know.
Yeah.
I really remember doing that, you know, because it all started from the kickboxing, you know. I had discipline from that, and so it was cool, you know. And speaking of extensions and stuff, kickboxing helped me with all that.
Oh, yeah, because
flexibility and all that body awareness and all that stuff, so it really helped me. Kickboxing was instrumental in my riding career.
Yeah.
If it wasn't for kickboxing, I probably never would have rode professionally freestyle.
Really?
Nope. I can almost guarantee it. Yep.
That's cool.
I'd have just been some stoner. You know? Nobody had ever heard of me.
You'd have just been some Oregon stoner.
Yeah, with Bruce Lee poster on his wall or something. But that's it. So anyway, I owe a lot to martial arts.
Yeah.
In a way. So it holds a special place in my heart. And so to me, you can't separate the two. Martial arts and freestyle are like this.
They work hand in hand with each other for you.
Absolutely. So. To this day, I still
and in martial arts, I mean, you're expressing yourself with that, just like with BMX, you're expressing yourself.
Yeah.
You know. So
yeah, it's a lot of discipline, and you know, it's just a beautiful art. And freestyle is a beautiful art, and so is martial arts. You know, I plan on going to Thailand this year, and that's the mecca of kickboxing.
Yeah.
Because I joined a Thai gym in Huntington Beach when I was living with Hans Ray, and that took it to a whole other level for me. Thai boxing, to me, that is kickboxing.
Yeah.
They invented it.
Yeah.
And then Americans, they kind of just watered it down. We don't use knees and elbows and leg kicks and stuff like that as much as they do that in MMA now. But the American kickboxing was watered down version of Thai boxing.
Because everybody was worried about getting hurt.
Lawsuits and all that stuff. Yeah, because elbows and knees are very dangerous.
Yeah. I'd be more than fight if somebody's like hitting me with an elbow.
Yeah, elbows are.
Oh yeah, they're just little razor blades.
They'll cut you right open.
Yeah.
It's real. And those guys, they use them just like a punch.
Yeah,
it's like a punch.
Because you're going to hurt your hands way faster than your elbows.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you know.
Yeah. And then a tie clinch is when you grab behind somebody's neck and you pull it down into your knees.
I've actually done that before.
It has a name called a tie clinch.
Yeah.
But anyway, so then I went to the second contest I went to was the Huntington Beach contest.
Yeah.
Which I just posted a picture on my Instagram account a couple weeks ago.
Was that the one where you were doing like the one hand,
one foot X up?
You know what's funny? As I saw that,
that's my second.
Because my buddy Bruce, because you weren't doing an inward one hand X, you were doing the outward one.
Yeah.
And we call those soupsters. That's, in the late 90s they got popular and they're called soupsters. My buddy Bruce Crispin, who won the X Games, he's from Tigard, Oregon.
Oh.
And I always love it when a dude from Oregon like blows up because usually they're just these like little small town like kind of redneck dudes. And I always am like,
you identify with that.
Yeah. Yeah, I love it. And my buddy Bruce,
That's my people.
He was like a state champion wrestler. He won that. But he got really well known for the soupster. And I'm like, I was like, I never remember anybody doing those until the 90s. And I saw that photo of you doing it. And I'm like, Josh is doing them at 85. Like, and I don't ever remember, and I'm all nerdy about it.
Do you remember my photo session with Freestyling?
I remember a few.
With the Wendy Osborne pictures? And
the one with you doing like the 1 foot grizz and the no foot invert on the cover, right?
No, the cover was the really small picture of me doing a no-footed one-handed can-can.
Okay, I do remember that one. Then you had that other one that was the tour one where you were doing the no-foot invert on the cover.
Well, in that photo session, I did a one-handed, one-footed X-up. And it was a really good one.
Yeah.
And I don't know if anybody really noticed it, but I never got anybody commenting on that for some reason. Nobody said, hey, that's...
Because the bike definitely... Especially back then, you didn't really pinch your seat or anything, to hold your bike steady like people do now. And I just feel like it really... Doing it one-handed would really want to get away from you, especially... how weird the bikes rode back then.
Another thing I didn't do that was different than a lot of people was like Brian and Mike and Eddie and those guys, the skate park guys, because they had to be under serious control riding those huge concrete bowls.
Yeah.
You had to be so stable. So all their one-footers and their one-hand one-footers, they would lock their cranks into place with their brakes.
Okay.
So when they did a one-footer, their cranks were level.
Yeah.
And then they would, because they wanted to know where their pedals were.
Yeah, yeah.
I never did that. I never locked my brakes. So my cranks just spun. They did whatever they wanted to. and I kind of had a looser style. My style was kind of like more aggressive and looser because I didn't worry about, because to me I was too stiff, and so. Yeah,
when I look at it, you were, Brian, Mike, everybody, everybody's icons, but I feel like when you came out, you really did push variations, and pretty hard to where I feel like some of the riding you did was really a precursor to early 90s vert riding with some of those really heavy variations, like, a few combos, like when you're doing like no foot can X-ups and stuff. It's like that, you were doing that, and then maybe Joe Johnson or Matt came in and started doing that stuff after you, but like that stuff was really gnarly for like, 86, 87,
Does everybody know that Joe Johnson is the inventor of the tail whip? Does he ever get credit for that?
Yeah, he does.
I wasn't sure because he definitely did the first tail whip on
Mike
Vert.
Was the first one. Dominguez almost did him. He had Sequence doing a 360 tail whip out of the combi bowl, popping out and getting it under his legs.
I didn't know that.
I think that's the thing with Dominguez is he did so much stuff and he didn't really even care.
Yeah.
He
invented the 900.
He invented 900. He invented... there's a sequence of him when he was on Hutch in Florida riding... what's that big Florida skate park? I'm having a brain fart right now. It's like one of the oldest in the country. Kona.
Oh, Kona, yeah.
And there's like this snake run, and they built like an extension, like a cement extension. I remember seeing Hoffman hit that thing at a contest, in the early 2000s. And you're like, oh, he's going pretty high. Then I'm flipping through an American freestyler, and here you got Dominguez hitting it on a Hutch Trickstar in 85, doing like 8-9 feet out of it.
Yeah.
Going higher than Matt, on a bike. Trickstars were squirrely.
Yeah.
Those tiny little forks.
Steep head angle.
Yeah. And
more of a ground bike than anything else.
So he's roasting out of it on that, and then he does a pedal stall, like almost like a peg stall on it, and goes back in, and I'm like, he did that?
Yeah.
Just for his brain to work like that, I was just like...
I saw him do a pedal picker drop-in one time.
Yeah.
Is that amazing? I couldn't believe that.
All those old drop-in tricks are
pedal picker drop-in. I witnessed it. I was like, oh my God. Mike Dominguez, that's like that's a Wilkerson thing to do.
Yeah.
That's not a Mike Dominguez thing to do.
You do it.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, I can't remember picturing Mike ever even do a flatland trick.
Yeah, and he had a freewheel. Pedal pickers are for close legs.
Yeah, that's...
So I was so impressed. I was
like a Dino DeLuca Wilkerson type trick.
Yes, absolutely. I was so impressed. I was like, damn, that guy, he's so talented. It pissed me off sometimes how good he was.
Yeah, but Joe totally gets, young kids coming up, they learn tail whips before they learn tabletops, Mm-hmm. But, people, when it comes up, everybody knows Joe invented that, and then the double tail whip, not too long afterwards, so...
Yeah. And then Jose Yanez invented the backflip.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not saying he invented the backflip, but on a BMX bike he kind of did, right? And so he was ahead of his time. Of course, that was the only trick he knew.
Yes.
So he wasn't really a rider. He just did a backflip. That's it.
Yeah, no, I think most people know that,
okay.
So, but, so you started getting really known from those contests for, like, just crazy variations.
Yeah, after the Huntington Beach contest, I upped my game quite a bit. Then they gave me a full factory sponsorship, which was great, And
then were the vert riders, like we were talking about earlier, it's like the vert riders were you and Eddie then, right? Pretty much. But Eddie's always been more of a cement skate park guy.
Right. So, it was just, as far as GT goes, it was just me and Eddie.
Was Eddie riding those quarter pipe contests at AFA?
No.
He'd ride, like, the flat contests, wouldn't he?
No, because Martin was.
I remember seeing footage of Eddie riding, like, the flat. I've seen some online and stuff, but Yeah, Eddie was more of just like king of skate parks.
Yeah, and then he was transitioning to I don't know what.
He was doing
shows. He was almost like I saw him as more of like a GT ambassador.
Yeah,
because he didn't really. He was out of a skate park. He was a little bit out of his element, and so he was just and he started getting into the Michael Jackson moonwalk stuff.
Yeah, I mean,
Eddie's doing a lot of
Eddie's great for that stuff.
He was a great showman.
Yeah,
whenever Eddie commands attention. Whenever he's around, and no matter what trick he's doing, he got such style, so smooth that people just loved him. He's just such a natural showman that people just gravitate towards him. No matter what he did, he had such charisma. So he could rest on that on those laurels.
Yeah.
And me, I'm like, damn, I gotta get my 540s higher.
Yeah.
Eddie, he didn't care about that stuff.
Were you doing?
Were
you doing 540s when you hit those first contests?
In Venice, I was doing 540s below the lip.
Yeah.
And then by the time Huntington came, I think I was doing them out.
Because you're kind of known for one of the first dudes to start doing 540s high. 4 or 5 feet out.
Yeah, I was doing them. I was trying to get out, and then I was getting out of my 6-foot ramp. But then when I got to the 8-foot, I couldn't really do it.
It's fully different, yeah.
And then I remember meeting Donovan Ritter at the Venice Con. I said, "Oh, wait, did I tell Mike?" Because he was like sponsored by Hutch at the time.
Yeah.
He's like, "Wait, I tell Mike you're doing 540s up above the lip." He's like, he's gonna freak out. He goes, he was only doing them down below, and I'm like, "Oh, cool. That was good to hear."
Yeah.
So I'm sure as soon as Mike heard that I was doing them out, he started doing.
Because I feel like in those mid '80s contests, it was you and Mike.
Yeah.
And there was sometimes you watch it and be like, "Ooh, you guys are getting really scary on that 8-foot ramp spinning those."
They're not very wide.
No.
I think those ramps are kind of
Mike did one at a Texas contest. I think he's like 8 or 9 feet out, and he comes in razor edge on the side.
There's nobody I like watching more than Mike Dominguez. He was my main inspiration, and as far as somebody that would push me, because he just always impressed me. There's very few riders where I was just awed by, but he was one of them. Definitely.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, who were the riders kind of that you
Mike
looked
for
at?
sure. Mike for sure. And I love Brian for his smoothness, but he just didn't have that intensity that Mike had,
Yeah.
And
Mike feels like, when you look at Mike, he has that look in his eye.
Oh,
I feel like, I've seen him ride a little older, but, I've only got to see him in his, craziness, on video, but it just feels like he had that click, it would just click over and he'd just go,
Yeah, he was amazing. He had a real strong mind.
Yeah.
If he put his mind to something, he would do it. It was just awesome. I always admired that. So it was cool. Yeah, he was awesome. Mike. I don't know if he still rides or not. I hope he does.
He rides. Yeah, I think just like anybody when they get older, it's just like, well, I can, do I have some buddies to go cruise with, because that always makes it better.
Yeah.
And then if your body's feeling good.
Yeah.
But I know he was riding up to a year ago, going on cruise.
Cool.
Yeah. So, I think just like everybody, it's just like when you have time to get on your bike, and if there's a ramp around that you actually like riding, because that has a lot to do with it sometimes. So
I hope I find some good places to ride down south, because
I'm sure really good. There's so many parks and stuff. You just got to find a good one.
I guess if the people listening don't know that I'm going to be moving to LA in a couple weeks. So
well, I know Vans has if you can get in that, they have a 9 or 10 foot vert ramp at their place.
At
the Vans headquarters.
At the Vans headquarters.
Yeah, and I see Rick Thorne and a few of those. Not trying to throw anybody, but I see dudes riding that ramp.
Okay. Okay.
So,
Well, I'll check it out.
Yeah,
for sure.
But yeah, so you're touring with GT and you're starting to hit the contests.
Mm-hmm.
When I did a podcast with Eddie, and he said those tours, he goes, it seemed, all gravy when you were watching them through the magazine stuff. He goes, but they were a grind. He goes, that was really hard work doing those tours.
Jeez, man, we'd get these rental vans that would pull the trailer, and it was summer. We're driving through Texas in July, and it was just 120 degrees, no air conditioning, and it's brutal.
Yeah.
It's brutal,
And then showing up at places where it's that hot and still having to...
Yeah, and then you got a show the next morning somewhere else, and you barely find a hotel at 12 at night. You hardly get any sleep sometimes.
Yeah.
It was pretty brutal, but it was fun too. Come on, that was a great experience. But what I liked about GT was, out of all, except maybe Haro, out of all the companies, they did the most traveling as far as internationally. So I got to go to France, I got to go to England, Canada, Mexico, Hawaii,
Japan,
Hong Kong, China, Macau.
Oh, you went to China?
Twice. Yeah.
Wow. And back in the 80s, going to China was
huge.
That was crazy.
You couldn't believe it. I was out of high school just going, wow, I'm traveling the world, man. It was awesome, And I even took it for granted a little bit. Sometimes I go, oh man, I got to go to France again, because I think I went to France 3 times.
Yeah.
And I was kind of tired of it. I was like, I got to go again. I would never say that that now. I would be like, I would jump at the chance, But back then, you get a little spoiled, you get a little, you take stuff for granted, and so I don't know. If I could do it over again, I definitely would have enjoyed it even more, and I would have probably, just immersed myself in it even more. Yeah. But when you're a kid, you can,
You got any good tour stories from back then? Any crazy?
I don't know. I mean,
Ron, you guys how many times did you get in a wreck with the van and the trailer?
Yeah. Oh, geez. Well, I mean, I got in a wreck with Ron Wilkerson.
Is that the one
who rolled the van with everybody in it?
Yeah, I've heard that. I've heard that from like 3.
Yeah, that was
Brian's told us about that one.
Ever. It was the stupidest thing ever. So it's just really good that nobody got hurt.
Yeah, because that one, I mean, it was really bad, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was bad. Yeah, I mean, it could have been a lot worse though, because nobody got hurt. But there was a toolbox that was full of tools that was in that van that was probably weighed about 30 pounds, and that went tumbling around the whole van, and luckily didn't take somebody's head off. Yeah. Because that could have killed somebody, that toolbox. I remember that. Because I picked it up and I was like, my God, if this would have hit me in the head, I'd be dead. Because it was flying around the inside.
I mean, who was all in that van that time? It was like you, Ron.
Oh, it was me, Ron, Dennis McCoy, Chris Dachi, a couple other people I can't even remember now. I think Joe Johnson might have been there.
Was Nori there?
Might have been Nori too. Yeah, a bunch of Haro guys, and then me.
So basically, a ton of icons from BMX could have just been gone.
Yeah. And the story was a dog ran in front of the van. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
But I don't know. Tour stories. Oh my gosh, it's just. I mean, nothing too incredible. It's not like we were rock stars or anything. I mean, but it was fun. A lot of times it would just be stuff that's not too incredible. You just meet. Like a lot of times we'd meet people that were just so friendly. They invite you over to their house for dinner, so we go over there, ride their ramp. Just hang out. It was cool.
That's the cool thing about BMX is. You can go somewhere and you're friends with somebody.
Yeah.
The minute you meet them.
Yeah.
And you're just like, hey.
Yeah.
Okay, we're chilling. You know, and it's cool when you do go to other countries because I think you get to see part of the culture that if you just go there as a tourist, you're not going to see. But people are going to actually take that, open the door for you and bring you in and immerse you into things.
Right.
Because they already feel comfortable with you because you ride BMX bikes and so do they. You know.
Yeah. So you have that bond for sure.
Yeah.
So.
And you probably went to England a lot for those early hole shot contests, didn't you?
Yeah, I didn't do it a lot. I went to England twice, so I did. I think 2. Well, I did one was a tour, I think, and the other one was a whole shot contest. So
how were those? Because I know that England's always been like gnarly vert dudes.
Yeah,
I
remember the whole shot. I can't remember. It was a weird experience that whole shot contest because I think I wasn't feeling very good, and it was just a weird trip, and I didn't do very well. I didn't ride very well. I don't think I liked the ramps or anything, and so I remember a couple riders were like talking that he's overrated and this and that, and it's just you can't be on every time.
Yeah.
So but they don't. There was no YouTube back then. There's no internet, so it's not like all they had to go by was what they saw that day.
Yeah,
and so that was their impression of me.
I mean,
you know what I mean?
Because you see things, and that's a funny thing about back then because you'd see things in the magazines. And magazines compared to media nowadays, it's all online, so you see how it works. But back then, a magazine can make. I mean, there were riders that were pro that you're like, this dude probably shouldn't have been pro, but they made him a rock star.
Right.
Right. And, I remember seeing tricks and you just didn't even comprehend how things worked to get into that trick because it's just a picture.
It's just a picture.
You just sat there and stared at it.
Yeah.
The magazine, and you're like, okay.
Yeah.
I don't know how that works.
Yeah.
And if you didn't have an older crew of better people around you to guide you, right? It was just you and your buddies trying to figure stuff out, getting jacked.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
but I used to love magazines. It's crazy that is there no bike magazine exists now?
I think the only one. So Dig BMX usually does one yearly, like that's really awesome, And then there's another magazine. I've only seen one of them called Endless, and I think that's out of England. Uh-huh. I should actually know. I feel really stupid not knowing. I think those are really the only two. Uh-huh. It's kind of there's some really awesome zines like this Challenger zine, and then kind of like the internet. I mean, even like some websites that used to be awesome, now everything's just so. It went from there'd be really cool websites like Def Grip and things that were almost just like magazines or zines where you could go get an article, and now it's even like just compressing it to where you're just flipping through your phone. Taking these things in, which is awesome at one point, but it is awesome to, when you see an awesome photo that, Spike shot or something back in the day or Windy, and you just sit there And, like I said, like a magazine can make somebody a superstar. You could look at an amazing photo, and the trick could be so basic, but the way the colors work and everything.
Yeah. Oh, you just get mesmerized by it.
It made everything feel more artistic.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like you're like, this is art, know? And I feel like a lot of pros, especially in the maybe late 80s, early 90s, really pushed that. Like, this is, what I'm doing is an expression.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
it's I think... like we were talking about earlier, I'm going to sound like an old man, but just some of the youth nowadays is missing out on that soul writing, just appreciating those little things.
And speaking of that, that was one of the things, and I was just thinking this as you were talking, that was kind of one of the things that kind of, I don't want to say drove me out of the sport, but kind of dampened my enthusiasm, let's put it that way.
Yeah.
Because here I am, this kid that's reading this magazine, and I want to be on this team, and I want to do this, and I want to travel. Well, all that came true, it all happened, and then it kind of got a little much. I was like, geez, this is I'm writing sometimes when I don't want to. I'm writing because I have to. It's my job, and that started to kind of wear on me a little bit. And I'm not sure why. It probably shouldn't have. And if I could go back and do it over again, I don't think I would have let it bother me. I started getting a little jaded, and it kind of took a little bit of the fun out of it for me, a little bit of the soul out of it.
Yeah.
Because I felt like I was just this corporate guy that had to represent this corporation, and they didn't even pay that well. The secretary that answered the phones at GT made more money than I did. And I'm not kidding. That's not a joke.
I believe it.
That's not a joke.
Yeah.
And I just didn't feel, and GT didn't allow you to get co-sponsors, so I couldn't get sponsored by Vans because they made their crappy shoes in Japan, these Dino shoes that were terrible.
I got a pair.
They had no grip at all. And so I couldn't get a Vans sponsorship. I couldn't get a grip sponsorship. I couldn't get, anything.
Yeah.
They wanted to control everything.
Where, like, if you did ride for Haro at the time, you could get
co-sponsors, right?
Like,
you could make more money.
And CW,
exactly.
I'm sure, Redline, I think you could still get co-sponsorships.
Right, yeah, GT wanted to control everything. And so, and
like I said earlier, there's great things about GT.
Yeah, and not so great things. Yeah. The great things were they traveled a lot, you got good exposure, they did good ads, they did lots of tours, they did great stuff like that. But yeah, as far as the money goes, oh man, they squeezed you hard, And so, I don't know, I got a little jaded, and it kind of, I just started getting a little like, why am I doing this? I'm not having fun anymore sometimes. Sometimes I would, but then sometimes I wouldn't. And so it just took that fun out of it for me a little bit.
A lot of bike riding is just being with your friends.
Yes.
And
just having a jam session, putting the radio on, just riding,
Like we talked about earlier, a lot of people thought you were from Camarillo. And I'm sure some of probably the best sessions back then were riding the infamous Camarillo ramp.
That was great. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was when I first moved to California, I lived with my grandparents actually, because I didn't have a place to live at first. And they were living in Laguna. So I lived with them for a little bit, but obviously you can't live with them forever. So I lived with a high school friend of mine in Fountain Valley, which is right near Huntington Beach. But there's no ramps. So all I was doing was flatland, and I couldn't ride ramps unless I was doing a show. And so then Dino was like, "Hey man, move up here."
Was Dino on Dyno at that time?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm like, "Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Why don't I?" So
did they already have? So whose ramp was that? Like
it was Doug Randazzo's.
Okay.
His ramp.
And was it 8 or 9 feet tall?
I think it was. Oh gosh. I want to say it was 8, but it could have been 9. I can't remember.
I look at that ramp now, and I'm like, as you get a little older, it's so simple and it looks so fun. I'm like, you got a big deck, you're hanging out with your buddies.
Yeah.
You just roll in, hit a booter air,
it's like
the lazy man ramp.
Yeah, it's like a little mini mega ramp. It's a roll in. It was really cool. You didn't have to pedal.
Yeah, you just get a good pump.
Sometimes you have to scrub your speed because you're going too fast.
Yeah.
So, but then he did build a half pipe too.
There was a half pipe next to it, wasn't it?
That wasn't next. It was on a different. I think his family sold that property, so that ramp got tore down, and he built a half pipe on his other property. But by that time, I only rode that for a couple months, and I ended up moving back down to Huntington Beach.
So who was kind of the Camarillo crew? Because I feel like that was kind of an iconic.
Well, Doug was a huge part of it because he had the ramps.
Yeah, he rode for what, CW or?
I thought it was a Redline. I mean, he wasn't much of a rider. He didn't ride too much.
Okay.
He was a facilitator.
Okay.
He was like, he was the one that had the ramp, and he was the one that got everybody going.
He's like a scene builder.
Right, he's a scene builder, and those are important people.
Oh, they're very important. Yeah.
and he was just the guy that got everybody together, Yeah. So he was the original, and then it was Todd Anderson,
who's amazing.
Who's amazing.
Yeah.
Super smooth.
I feel like
rider.
Todd's kind of, when it comes to vert riding, Todd's way more underrated than he should be.
He is. He was awesome.
He still rips. He still rips.
He rides still?
Dude, he was up in Portland last year and was riding one of the parks. He still rides a coaster.
No way.
If there's a good quarter, I know he can still rip that, but he'll be hitting a Bubaka bar spins. And like, dude, he's just so smooth.
He was good at bar spins way back then. He was one of the first that did bar spins.
Doing bar spins and like all the
not bar spin airs, but more like a
lot of
bar
tech
spins
stuff.
and
I mean, he was
kick turn bar spins and stuff like that.
He could rip like because he did good in the early 2-hip street contests, like on the street spines.
Really?
And stuff. He's just. Yeah, he's so sick.
He had a real original style. When you saw him ride, you knew who it was.
Oh, definitely.
Those over-click look backs and stuff.
Where him and Dino standing on their coaster brakes.
Yeah, the coaster bros, man. The coaster bros.
If you're goofy-footed and you have a coaster brake and you don't have a good look back, I feel sorry for you.
I know. It's tailor-made, right?
You better stand on that thing and lock it up and just twist it around.
Yeah. So it was basically, Doug, Todd, and then Dino DeLuca, obviously.
Yeah.
He was my roommate when I moved to Camarillo. We lived in his mom's condo.
Nice.
And it's funny. I stayed in his mom's room, and Dino had the room that he was always in. And his mom, I don't really know his mom very well, but she must have been quite a lady. Yeah. Because I came in there and she had a big old 4x8 mirror above her bed. I mean, this was a massive mirror, and it was framed, and it was wired to the ceiling, and I had a waterbed underneath it.
Oh, the waterbed.
The waterbed. Can you believe that?
It sounds so 80s.
Yeah. Oh, dude. And the walls had mirrored tiles with bamboo imprinted on them. It looked like a 70s porn set is what it looked like, honestly. And when I was on tour, Doug and his girlfriend filmed the porno in my room and showed it to me.
That's my pillow.
Because they wanted to do it. I don't know why, just because of the way the room is decorated. But they also wanted to get at me, we filmed the porno in your bed.
They're like, hey, come here and watch this.
Yeah, they did. You gotta be kidding me. But it was awesome. One time, I was sleeping in the morning, and I woke up to the whole room shaking because we had an earthquake.
Yeah.
And I looked up above me, and this big, gigantic mirror that probably weighed at least 100 pounds was vibrating violently right above my head.
Did you get out of the bed?
You never saw anybody get out of bed so fast. I rolled ninja style right out of my bed because I thought that mirror was going to come crashing down.
That would have fucked you up.
Oh, I'd have been like Jigsaw.
And you'd been covered in water.
Yeah, it probably would have punctured the bed.
Blood and water.
Luckily, the mirror never came down. They had it wired up pretty good. But that was scary.
Yeah, I was in an earthquake once in California, and coming from up here, when that happens, like I was at the Odyssey warehouse, and I ran out to the parking lot, which you're not supposed to do, but I'm an idiot. I run out the parking lot, and literally the parking lot was rolling like waves.
The pavement?
Yeah, and I was just like, it made me feel like I was like in a different dimension. Like I was just like. It was intense. Like it messed with my brain just looking at it.
Yeah, earthquakes are intense, aren't they?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh! I was working at a Porsche dealership I worked at a Porsche dealership when I left GT, and I was in the back, and there was those big dumpsters, those green dumpsters. We had an earthquake, and that just shot across the parking lot because of the shock waves.
Yeah,
and it was full. It was heavy.
Yeah,
and it just started rolling on its own. I was like,
it makes you feel so insignificant. You're just like, I'm nothing.
I know. I mean, gosh, dude. Yeah, earthquakes are intense. You ever felt an earthquake?
One time.
They are intense.
Yeah.
But it was in Oregon, so it wasn't very...
Yeah.
I was just like, why are the lights
I
moving?
felt a little one here, but the one I felt in California was big enough to where I saw the ripples, and I was like...
intense.
So, one thing about Camarillo Ramp, and I always ask people that rode it, McCoy always says, because it was famous for the height pole and everything. Yeah. He's like... He's convinced that height, every foot was like 7 inches on it.
Oh, I don't know. I can't verify that.
I've been around him where he's always trying to get to the bottom of it. He's like...
Well, the tape was pretty thick. So if you go just the space in between, it might have been. But if you go from the bottom of the tape to the top of the tape, it was probably a foot.
He's always convinced. He's like, I don't think... He goes, that thing was lying to everybody.
Yeah. All you have to do is look at the person standing next to it. Most people...
Well, that's why he always bring up some picture. He's like, I know how tall... It was like Todd or somebody standing there. He goes, I know how tall he is, and he's not 6'5".
Hey, it may have been off. I don't know. I never measured it.
I know. It's just a funny thing to bring up, you know?
Yeah.
So, let's talk... I feel like one of the contests that you... Which is the contest you won? The Velodrome one?
Yeah, that was one of them.
Yeah, so, that was a gnarly contest for the time. Was that 86 or 87? I think it was 87.
Yeah, it might have been 87, yeah.
And it was kind of like you and Mike battling it out, right?
Yeah.
And they had the channel and everything.
Yeah, that was a cool contest.
Yeah.
There was a few Velodrome contests, but that was a good one. That was a good one.
Yeah, would you think that was kind of like I mean, that was like right before the half pipe contest started hitting.
Yeah, that was before two hip.
Yeah. Which one? What did you kind of prefer? Did you like riding the vert? I mean, you did good in the vert contest too.
I did okay. I didn't really. I felt like I was more of a quarter pipe guy because I grew up kind of riding quarter pipes, and I was kind of more, and then half pipes were all right. I was just never that comfortable on them. I mean, it wasn't my strength.
Yeah.
The pumping and the consistent riding. And I wish I would have got better at half pipe. I wish I would have ridden them more because I would have gotten a lot better at them. But I don't know. I was more of a quarter pipe guy. I did a lot of tours for GT with quarter pipes, and
if you think about a lot of the GT dudes, you look at even Volker and stuff. It's like
it's quarter pipe. So I was used to pedaling, doing an air, and then that was it.
Yeah,
just to do air to air, wall to wall. That's tough. It's not as easy as it looks. It really isn't. And so I just didn't spend as much time on half pipes as I probably should have. So I wasn't that great at two hip. I don't even think I ever won a two hip contest. I might have, but I can't remember. But AFA, I was very comfortable with that. Because it was just my thing. So that was the only chance I had at beating Mike was at a quarter pipe contest.
Yeah.
In a half pipe, he had me. It was pretty much it. But I don't know.
Yeah, Mike really translated from the cement skate park to the quarter pipe, and then to the
so did Brian. They
Brian did
great.
too. Yeah.
So it was just their thing. So, but. Yeah, I mean, the Velodrome contests were cool. They were fun.
Yeah.
We'd have fakey contests.
That's like the peak of AFA, don't you feel like?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, they had a bunch of co-sponsors, Sacco and all these other sponsors that were unusual because they didn't really have those, independent. Like, AFA contests didn't have a lot of support. It was just Bob doing it on his own. They had a little bit of support, but it wasn't he was barely holding that thing together, I don't think he made any money.
Do you think was 87? Do you think for the 80s the peak of BMX freestyle? Like
I would say,
the 80s, biggest contest. Like
it had to have been 87. Going into 88.
Maybe some of the dudes were making the most money in 87.
Probably.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, and you could just feel the sport where it was headed. You could just feel it, what was happening, the support and the kind of the...
Like feeling it getting bigger, or it felt like it was about to pop?
Yeah, about to pop. Like in 88, heading into 89, I could feel it. Just and plus my own enthusiasm. So it was kind of weird. The sport was kind of declining, and my own enthusiasm for the sport was declining at the same time.
Yeah.
Which is weird. Which wasn't true for a lot of people, like Dave and Matt Hoffman, and those guys were as hungry as ever.
Hoffman's like the generation after you, though,
Yeah, I guess so. Because he didn't turn pro till after I retired.
He turned pro in 88. He turned pro at the 88 finals. I remember he won AM, and then he turned pro.
I was on my way out right there. And
then he won the pro contest.
Yeah.
It was that big two-hip contest that was inside that was all rock starry.
Irvine or something like that.
Yeah, and I think... But Matt, I would say Matt's like the generation. I'd say it's like
he bridged the gap for
you
sure.
and Mike D were battling, and then Matt kind of came in.
He could have rode pro back then.
Oh, he definitely.
I don't know why he didn't.
When he was on Skyway, he could have rode pro.
Why didn't he? I don't know. I mean, it's weird.
Well, it could have been like the sponsors. Sponsors were weird. They could have been like, no, you're not going to turn pro yet.
And even Dave and Dino could have turned pro back then, and they didn't for some reason. I mean, the pro class wasn't very big.
Dino actually was AM for quite a
long time, and so was Dave.
Yeah,
and I don't know why. The whole time I rode for GT, those guys were all. I would think I was the only pro ramp rider on GT. And then most people don't remember they sponsored Joe Johnson, and he was a pro ramp rider.
GT?
GT did, yeah.
Really?
Yep. And that was right when I retired. As soon as they got Joe Johnson on the team, I said, okay.
When did you? I mean, I know we're skipping ahead and stuff, but. Fuck it, whatever. When did you it's like weird to say retiring because you're just like, well, it's like I know you still rode, but like when did when did the GT thing come to the end?
Well, I had a meeting with GT and I said, hey, you guys, these contests are not really. I'm not really feeling these contests. They're getting crazy. The moves are getting nuts. I'd rather just do shows. I like doing shows. It was fun. The crowd and everything. It was really cool. You could just ride within yourself. You didn't have to prove anything. Contests were like, oh my god, it's like a big dick measuring contest. Who can go the highest? Who can do the highest 540? Who can do who can do the newest?
Well, and BMX was moving so fast.
It was, and it's great, and it should. That's the evolution. That's how sports evolve. Okay, so that's the way it should happen. I wasn't trying to rally against that. I was just not. I didn't want to be a part of it. I was like, okay, my riding is going to kind of stop right here. I'm not going to evolve any more past this. I don't feel comfortable going past this, and so I'm going to stay right here, kind of like Eddie did. Just do shows. Just be an ambassador for the company.
Yeah.
Nope. They said nope. If you don't do contests, you're not going to be sponsored. I said okay, bye.
What year was that?
It was probably right at the end of '88.
Okay.
I remember the Matt Hoffman versus Josh White.
Yeah. It was probably right around then.
Yeah, and then that magazine, and then I waited for the next issue to come out, and then they canceled it.
They canceled the magazine.
They canceled it, so the results never came out.
Yeah.
The Josh White versus Matt White.
But when they sponsored Joe Johnson, I said, he's your contest guy. He's doing tail whips. He's hungry. He's younger than me, by a couple years. But anyway, and I said, I just want to do shows. Can I just do shows? And then he can do the contests and then whatever. They said, no, that's not going to work. We need you to do contests. It's important for our brand, yada, yada, yada. I said, okay, I don't want to ride anymore. And they said, oh, okay. They didn't even try to talk me out of it. They're like, fine, we got Joe now. So, it was just kind of unceremonious.
Well, no, Joe was on Haro and then he went to GT.
Yeah.
Okay, so when you said that earlier, I got so mixed up there. I was like, yeah, because
he was on Haro forever.
Yeah,
even Brian Blank was sponsored by GT.
GT
sponsored everybody at one point.
Yeah, but and then Joe wasn't even on GT that long.
No,
he left two more years.
Yeah, it wasn't much.
So 88. I remember, you're talking about like where you're peaking out, but your peak at that time was pretty, you were doing like, you were one of the early 540 variation guys, like doing Can X up 540s.
Yep, Can X up 540s. I did in my last, I think it's my last AFA contest that I remember, I did a one-handed Can 540 and pulled it.
That's
in competition.
Yeah.
Which I was impressed myself. I was like, dang, that's pretty cool, And I as far as I remember, that was my last AFA contest I ever entered.
And then I remember I feel like you did really good at that Flint, Michigan contest with the skull on the ramp.
Yeah, that was early in my, what year was that?
That was 88.
Oh, was it really?
Well, they did one in 87 on a blue ramp, but they had that skull ramp.
That's one I remember.
And I think a bunch of dudes came over from England and stuff and rode that, but I remember you did pretty good in that one too,
Yeah.
So, the phone.
Hey, where's airplane mode? But anyway, so that's kind of how my exit from GT happened. And then I actually ended up working for GT, believe it or not, just in the warehouse, just because I needed money. And they hired, I don't even know what else I was doing. I was just like, I can't remember what I was even doing. I only lasted a few months. And then I was like, then I met this guy who was a regional sales manager for Porsche North America.
Yeah.
And so he got me a job at the Porsche dealership in Newport Beach, driving the cars. So I was driving Porsches, and there was also a Rolls Royce, Bentley, and Lamborghini. So I was driving Bentleys and Rolls and Lamborghini Countachs and stuff. I was only making, minimum wage, but who cares? I was driving these, $300,000 cars. And so that was awesome. So I did that for a while. So this was my foray from pro bike rider to regular working Joe.
Was it weird at the time?
It was weird, but I was happy with it.
Yeah.
I didn't look back. I didn't say, I wish I was still riding. I didn't, And then Eddie called. I hadn't ridden in a year, and Eddie called and said, "Hey, Van's got a team."
The promotion tours.
Yeah,
right?
The promotion tours. And I got Scott Freeman. Let's do some tours. I'm like, okay, cool. Let's do some shows.
And you guys all got bikes from Bully.
Got bikes from Bully, and that's when I started riding again. And so that lasted a couple years, and that was, like 2 years.
But you were back to touring and just kind of having fun with your friends.
Having fun, yeah. We were going to like amusement parks, and we were going all over the country, and Vans was the main sponsor,
Yeah,
Bully was like a co-sponsor.
Yeah.
And that was fun, man. That was awesome.
Did you kind of, it's like when you look at bike riding, especially when you get older and you look back, were you like, did you miss it? Were you like, there's this thing again that like an old friend or something?
Yes, I totally missed it. And I remember the ramp. It was probably the best quarter bike I had ever ridden. It was a steel-framed plexiglass ramp that hung on the side of the trailer. And it was,
I think
the
I've
whole
seen
top
it,
of the trailer was the platform, and it was one of the best quarter pipes I ever rode. So when I was riding for Van, I was doing my best riding.
Yeah,
I was doing
But it was like awesome. Probably one of the deadest times in BMX.
Right.
What was that, like 90 maybe?
Yeah, we weren't even riding for BMX crowds. It was just amusement park crowds, schools, just people that weren't.
I saw one of the first show I saw was a promotion tour.
Really?
It was, but you didn't know which one you were getting because there was two teams. I think you, Eddie, and Scott were the bigger team, and then there was Todd. I saw Todd.
That was before me. I replaced Todd.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Because I saw Todd.
Todd and Eddie had a falling out.
Well, I saw Todd and who were the other two? Jeff Cotter, because he was doing the backflips.
Yep.
And then
I never rode with Jeff though.
We were talking. I'm having a brain fart right now. Who would you get the dyno from?
Who did I get it from? Danny Hubbard?
Yeah. So it was Todd Anderson, Danny Hubbard, and Jeff Cotter is who I saw.
Oh, okay.
And it was like, maybe that was like 91, 92.
Okay, so maybe, okay. So
it may have been the tail end of the Vans.
So I think, and then Eddie was doing stuff with Danny too, and Jeff.
Yeah.
But then I guess Danny and Eddie their personalities didn't clash, so that's why Eddie wanted to start his own team.
Okay.
And that's when Scotty and I came in.
Okay.
So there was 2 teams, right?
Yeah.
I think at first there was 1 team.
Yeah, because I remember I was looking in the magazine and they had they'd have the ads for the tours, and I was like, it said Bend, Oregon, and I was like, that's 40 minutes away. Nothing like that happened in Central Oregon.
Yeah.
And you were like, and the funny thing is Jerry broke his ankle that day with us.
Oh, wow.
We went dirt jumping after the show, and he broke his ankle.
Oh, man.
So
that's brutal.
Yeah.
So I rode for a couple years with bands, and then that kind of, I'm not sure exactly why or how that ended, but I ended up moving back to Oregon and not owning a bike, working construction. From about 92 to 94, Danny Hubbard calls me out of the blue and said, hey, let's go on tour. Got this big tour scheduled. I was getting sick of construction. I was like, okay, sounds great. I hadn't touched a bike in 2 years, but I'm game.
Wait,
So
what did you say that was like 94?
That was 94.
Yeah.
Hence the 94 dyno. So I flew down to LA. Danny got that bike for me.
What did you feel weird getting a GT branded bike?
Yeah, I was wondering why it was a dyno instead of a GT, but I didn't really care. I was kind of glad to get a dyno because I'd never really ridden one before, and I was like, oh, cool, something different,
Yeah.
It was weird that they gave me the dyno. Maybe it was just they had overstock or something.
Yeah.
Who knows? It was just like, oh yeah, give them that. It was just laying around the warehouse. Who knows? But so I liked it. I loved the bike, so it was great. So I started learning how to ride again on tour because I hadn't ridden in 2 years, and so I had to the first show we did, I probably was doing 4-foot airs, and then by a couple weeks later, I was doing 8-foot airs.
How old were you at this time?
I was I was in 94, so
So you're like 27?
Yeah,
28?
late 20s.
You're about 10. I graduated in 94, so I was 17. So.
Okay.
So yeah, you've been like
about 20.
It's funny because you look back,
not washed up by any means.
No, because you're like,
God.
Imagine being 20. I mean, 27. You're at the peak of being
right.
But like BMX back then, it's like you get to 27 or something, and it just seemed ancient.
Yeah.
And now
especially when I hadn't ridden in so long.
Yeah.
So I hadn't ridden. Well, 2 years isn't that long, I guess, compared to now. It's been 25 years.
And you just started
started kind of riding recently, and a very limited amount, by the way.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd only probably, if you added all the minutes together I rode before I took those pictures with Chris, it might be an hour.
Yeah.
60 minutes in the last 25 years. Okay, that's not very much time.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, I mean, that's crazy, actually.
Did you ever like after you did those tours with Dan, how long did those tours last with Danny when you were doing the tours with that?
That was a big tour. Oh my gosh, we were gone probably at least 6 weeks, if not longer. That was coast to coast. We went all the way to the East Coast, all the way through the South. We were doing 3 shows a day at 3 different schools.
Yeah.
So it was brutal.
So it was you, Danny, and
Andrew Arroyo.
Okay.
He was the Flatlander.
And he was probably really young at that time, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was just out of high school, I think. So we were riding, and I was having a great time. I was having fun. I was riding good and everything. Feeling myself a little too much, I guess, one time, and it was about 3/4 of the way through the tour. We had about another week and a half, 2 weeks to go, and I did a 540 pretty dang high, but it was one of our early morning shows. We were doing shows like 8 o'clock in the morning.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, because we had an 8 o'clock show, we had like a 12 o'clock show, and like a 3 o'clock show at 3 different schools. Okay, and so it was brutal. So this was an early morning show, and I did a 540. It was really high. It was probably about 6 feet out, which is high on an 8-foot ramp.
Yeah, especially when it's 8 feet wide.
Right. So I should have been doing stuff like that for 6th graders. I should have just been doing 4-foot 540s. And they would have been just as impressed. But I was riding for myself, at that point. And so anyway, I hung up, separated my shoulder, didn't finish the tour on the bike. I finished on the mic.
Yeah.
And when I got home, I was like, "That's it. I'm done. This is, I'm doing riding for peanuts. You're making like $100 a show." I was like, "This." I separated my shoulder. I'm done. That's it. And so I sold my bike to Chris, my dyno, and hadn't ridden since. To this day, really, or the last couple months.
Yeah.
And that was it. That was my career. I put it on the shelf, and then didn't look back because I could see where the sport was headed anyway. It was like. I didn't even recognize the sport when I saw it on the X Games and stuff. It was already starting to evolve past what I could comprehend.
Yeah.
And it was getting into the circus tricks and stuff. And I'm like, I have no future in this sport anyway, so why pursue it? And I should have just rode for fun and rode for myself and just. But I didn't. I don't know why I didn't. Something in my head just.
Well, I mean, but at that time, how many people around you other than Chris were really riding?
Nobody.
Because Chris. I mean, that's about the same. 94ish is when we were riding together.
Yeah,
but
he was riding.
What the funny thing is like if you would have came out to like the 30 trails or because the Oregon scene, I feel like in '89 kind of died really hard, and then around '94, I feel like the 30 trails really built it up. It's like, imagine if Josh would have been out the trails with like Dave, Tom, and like all of us just riding some dirt jumps.
Yeah.
Just being, just.
Oh, they would have loved it. I can remember saying.
But it would have been great. Just you'd have been like, oh, a bunch of just Oregon kids out here just riding some jumps and.
See, what took my attention away from freestyle is I've always had other interests, and so I was still really into kickboxing. So I got back into that with my original instructor, and I was training really hard. And then I also started really heavily getting into snowboarding. Yeah, I was doing backflips. I was doing cliff jumps.
Were you snowboarding with Jerry and stuff?
No, I never really snowboarded Jerry too much.
Yeah,
but the couple times that I did, he rode like a little he did little freestyle tricks.
Yeah,
I was a free rider. I would jump cliffs. No, I went to Alaska and jumped 40-foot cliffs.
Yeah, I mean, I've been snowboarding since like '89. Yeah. Because I grew up, we in the winter in Central Oregon, we just skipped school and scalped tickets for Bachelor. Yeah. So we were just, it's great when you live here and you can't ride your bike. Yeah. You can go up to the mountain, you know?
So, and I can't say that competed with riding because it's a different time of year, obviously.
Yeah. And it's a whole different feel, too.
Yeah, oh yeah. I took right to it. I
like the thing I like about snowboarding is you're up in the mountain, you're with the trees, and it's a different feel.
When I started snowboarding, I was like, I love this sport more than anything. Now to me, it's just a hobby. I go up every once in a while, a couple times a year.
This year,
yeah, or was it last season? Yeah,
with Jerry up there. Jerry and Mike. Yeah, I do the same thing. I just want to go up. I don't even jump anymore. I just want to cut some turns.
Yeah, just turn and have fun.
See the mountain. Yep. Enjoy it with the lift time with your buddy. But
back when I first started riding though, snowboarding, I treated it like freestyle. I needed to do 540s. I needed to do big airs. I needed to do backflips. I needed to do and so I was pushing myself. It wasn't like I ever wanted to compete. I just did it because it was an outlet. Yeah, it was something for me to get I wasn't riding freestyle, so it had to go somewhere. Right? Yeah, and then for some reason, I just never turned my attention back to freestyle. I don't know why.
How long did you pursue? So you got really serious about the kickboxing thing, though.
Serious in a way where I didn't necessarily want to compete because there was really no money in it back then. UFC was just evolving and just starting.
Were you paying attention to those early?
And I watched the very first fight on pay-per-view.
Oh wow!
The very first.
What's that, like 1990 or something, or was it?
God, yeah, I think so. It was. Where was that? That was. Yeah, at least.
That's what it was crazy when you just see a big fat dude out there. Yeah. It was like blood sport.
Yeah. There was no weight classes. There was no round time limits. So it was open-ended.
It was just a free-for-all.
Yeah. I mean, there was one round I saw was 30 minutes long. One round. But see, you can't sell that. It wouldn't be as popular as it was today. That's why when they sold it to the current to the people who own it now, they changed the sport. They put rounds, weight class. There was no weight classes. There's no,
well, I just remember when I'd see that stuff back there. There was like this big fat dude that was like knocking everybody out.
And they wanted to do that because they wanted contrasting styles. They put this big sumo guy up against a karate guy. Who's going to win?
You could finally see who was who was better: karate, wrestling, kickboxing, boxing.
So that took my attention away, and so for some reason I never had an influence where, hey, let's ride, let's go, and I didn't want to anyway. I didn't have the desire for some reason.
Did you feel kind of beat up? I mean, from injuries or anything?
No, I was physically fine. Yeah, I've had very few injuries in my life.
The shoulder ones kind of.
The shoulder was maybe I just don't handle injuries very well. You know, because that's nothing compared to what a lot of people experience. My God, Matt Hoffman, imagine if he was afraid of injuries. He would have stopped riding years ago. Yeah. So I don't know if that had anything to do with it or not, honestly, but I'm not sure. I have no answer for you. Yeah. What did I? But then recently, with Dave Volker and then Ben at GT, they're kind of they when Ben sent me that bike kind of out of the blue,
just that cruiser, just a cruiser around
cruiser. Yeah. I'm like, oh wow, and so I started riding it just for cardio. I started riding it because my doctor said, hey, you got high blood pressure. You better kind of monitor that. I hate doing cardio at the gym. I hate doing, Stairmasters and treadmills and stuff. So I said, I'm going to use this as my cardio. So I started
That's actually a good bike for it, a big 29.
It's a great bike for it, and it's got a gear that's just perfect. It makes you work just hard enough. Well, I started riding down the bike trail, and then I started riding right by Ashland Skate Park. And I'm like, So I started kind of watching the kids,
Did you see some BMX dudes in there?
There was not a lot, but there's a couple. Mostly it's scooters and skateboards. Yeah. But I just sit there and kind of go, So after 2 or 3 times going by, which I never even rolled in, I just watched and then left. And I finally rolled in and said, and slowly but surely, I started doing airs. Mm-hmm. And after
just seems insane. When I saw that photo of you doing the air and the talent bowl on that 29-inch bike, It seems crazy on those wheels.
Yeah, it's yeah. I don't want to think about it too much because it is kind of crazy. I'm surprised I even did it. But I wanted to show Ben, hey, you didn't send me this bike for no reason.
You're going to ride it, yeah.
I'm going to ride it. I'm going to actually make use of it, and I have. Believe me, I've ridden it.
Do you feel like you're just riding for fun?
For fun, like back in the day.
Yeah.
You know? And which I did a little bit when I first left GT. I got a Robinson, and I started riding that. I got a S&M.
Because you're in the Ultimate Weekend video that Steve Emig made. I mean, I brought that up, and you're like, I'm in it? Like,
yeah.
But you're riding S&M in it.
Yeah. And I remember I had an S&M, I had a Robinson, because to me it brought me back to my roots, back to the dirt jumping days, and just the simple. I didn't have any pegs on it. It wasn't a freestyle bike. It was just have fun bike.
It was just a bike.
It was just a bike. Just like, it was just like, I needed this, I'm not being paid to do this. I don't have to do this. I don't, I'm not under any pressure. And so that was cool. And too bad that feeling didn't last, I mean, of course I did ride after that. I did two, the Eddie Tour and the Dan Tour. I did two. But to me, that was going back to my roots. And so that was what that was all about.
Like that day you went out to the 30 trails with Chris? I mean, that's kind of just going back to your roots.
Yeah, it was. And, not that I was much of a dirt jumper anyway. It wasn't really my specialty. I mean, it was when I was younger, but I didn't really ride dirt. When I was riding on GT, I never touched dirt, ever. It was just half pipes and quarter pipes. That was it. I was kind of a specialist.
I mean, do you think that tuning you into that kind of took away just the fun aspect? Like, you're just like, I just want to go ride dirt with my buddies?
Yep.
One thing, I remember maybe it was an early interview when people in one of the magazines you said you considered yourself more of a flatlander. Yeah, and I think that's always stuck with you.
It was a joke. It was a joke.
Oh, it was a joke.
Well, it was half a joke actually, because at the time it was the Oak Street ramp that I was riding. Yep. Well, it got beat up. It had one layer of plywood, so it was getting holes in it. It was getting rained on, and it was getting beat up, and it wasn't that much fun to ride anymore. It was like I didn't even enjoy riding it really, and I didn't have any money to fix it or whatever, and I didn't have the motivation, so I would just start riding flatland more. Were
you riding with Gavin at that time?
Yeah, riding with Gavin or just myself or just the neighborhood kids. Usually the kids were younger and stuff. They'd follow me around and we'd learn tricks up in the bank parking lot by the co-op, and we'd ride there. And that's why when I came down to and did the photo session, I was like, guys, I haven't even ridden a half pipe in a long time or a ramp I ride ground more often. I'm probably consider myself a ground rider more. Yeah. And I was just joking, and they love that.
Oh, that quote! I think that quote stuck with you forever.
Oh, they loved it. Yeah. Oh, that's haunted me. Actually, that's really haunted me. But they thought it was a cool contrast because they put that over these pictures of me riding, and it was like such a.
That was like. What were you riding the ramp that was at Wizard that day?
Yeah, the TOL.
TOL, yeah.
Love. Which was that wasn't the greatest ramp. It was small, under Vert, 8-foot ramp that was under Vert. So.
But it was at the magazine, so you could go there.
It was at the magazine. That photo session. Bob Osborne, Oliver Osborne, Wendy Osborne, all the Osbornes were there, And
so you're just some kid from Oregon.
Some kid from Oregon going, oh my God. And so I was like pulling all the stops,
Yeah.
That's why I did the one hand, one footed X up. And
I think you had like a 1 foot grizz.
1 foot grizz. Yeah, well, grizzes are 1 foot, but I did
got me with that.
Yeah. There's no such thing as a grizz without 1 foot.
You're like, it's a Hannah.
Otherwise it's a Hannah. Exactly. That Grizz area you posted, it was awesome, dude. I don't think I've ever seen that.
I think that's from the Velodrome contest, yeah.
God, I was like, dang, man, I don't even remember that picture. That's great. Those
screen grab it. Dude. I posted that 1 foot X up through 540 too.
Yes.
I mean, 1 foot X. The can X up